All right, I am so excited to welcome Krystal Kraker to the podcast. Welcome, Krystal.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm super excited that you're here. And before we get started, can you introduce yourselves for our listeners?
My name is Krystal Kraker, and I am an indie author. I write romance. My first three books are fantasy romance, short, bite-sized, quick reads, and I have an epic historical romance coming out in February called Hell's Revenge, and it's about a pirate.
Amazing. I actually, when I reached out to you, did not know you wrote romance, so that was such a pleasant surprise when I read your form, and I was like, amazing. Can't wait to
Yeah,
talk about
no, but
that.
yeah, in my like day job, like I'm also like new mom and
Yeah,
I'm a content strategist for an editing software.
awesome.
Um, yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. We will link to your books in the show notes, and I'm sure that we will have some. Hopefully, you'll get some good clicks your way. Okay, so
I
let's
hope
get
so.
started. Yeah, I'm gonna show you four works of art,
All right.
and I don't want you to pay any too much attention to the titles. We don't spend a lot of time on titles. We really just want to look at the image, and then just whatever one really draws you in, not necessarily intellectually, but like what like emotionally grabs you, what makes you captivated, what makes you want to
Okay.
really dig in. And I've only picked art that I feel has stuff to discuss. So all of them are good choices. So feel
All
free to
right.
choose. I always have one that I want you to choose, but we'll see if you choose the one that I want. Okay, let me get it up on the screen. I wouldn't normally tell you the titles, but since we have listeners, they probably want to know what we're looking at. All right, share screen.
Oh,
All right, so our first one is Propped by Jenny Seville. And then we have the second image just has the text because I flipped the image. It was a mirrored text. I flipped the image and I was like trying to get all the text. This one is Purple Diagonal by Joan Samel. I may or may not be pronouncing her
beautiful.
name right. Then we have Self Portrait Naked with My Mother Too by Chantal Joffe. And then we have Study for a Portrait by Francis Bacon, 1967. Any of them calling you?
I think number two.
Oh, alrighty. So we have Purple Diagonal by Joan Samel. And this one was in Fort Worth recently at an exhibit at the Modern, which I was able to see this in person, which was awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's lovely.
Okay, let me pull it up bigger for us to see, and then we will describe it for our listeners. You can still see that?
Hmm.
Okay. All right, why don't you start us off with a description?
All right. So in this painting, it's a like a view of like a naked woman, I'm assuming woman, and then it looks like other legs of maybe more masculine legs and lots of colors. But the view is like she's laying down from and taking a picture like downward, but she's
Mhm.
naked. So like if she was holding the like if she was taking a selfie, she'd be holding the phone up and looking downward at the bottom. And she's kind of intertwined, laying down, and there's just so she's very neutral colored. She has some colors on her belly. She's very curvy, but the legs around her have these just like beautiful blues and yellows and reds.
Yeah, it's a really dramatic mix between realism and then just really painterly, bold colors.
Yeah.
You can see the strokes of paint. You can see the texture of the paint um, on there. Yeah, I think that was. And then the background is just plain. Maybe there's like they're on laying on something white, and then there's
Mhm.
just a like a dark purplish black background, but nothing in the background other than them. Okay, so what drew you in? What made you really want to pick this one?
The color really drew me in. There's such a big contrast between the body of the main figure and then the legs whatever else is wrapped around her. The color is just stunning, and the
Mhm.
contrast is really interesting now that I'm thinking about it. But I also really like that, like, she's clearly curvy. Can't kind of tell. It's very sensual. Like, you can't
Mhm.
tell where parts start and end. And that's really fascinating. But the color is definitely what pulled me.
Yeah. It's interesting because I when I choose these, I don't spend a whole lot of time looking and thinking about them because I don't want to, I like to just come in fresh. And so I hadn't like really looked and tried to figure out, is it one figure? Is it two figures? Is it, I was like, oh, we'll figure it out if she chooses this one. But you're saying two figures. And in my head, I'm always just seeing one. Um, and I think what I'm personally seeing is maybe that, well, I just don't know. Because every time I think I have it nailed down, I get confused by some other part of it. So it's very hard to
Yeah, the more you look at
decipher.
it, you're like, what body part is that? There's a disproportionate amount of legs to persons
Yeah.
that could be. um, it's really just the way they're entangled, like they're
Hmm.
one. That is, I don't think it's important when people are in there.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And then two, I'm noticing like we have her stomach and well, what we're assuming is yeah, it's well,
Stomach,
it,
maybe thighs down there.
and then there's like is this a wrist and like the
I
hand back?
think so, but it's cut off at like a weird point.
Yeah. And then it almost looks like her whole self is inside of this leg here. There's like a orangish foot, and then it kind of comes out. I'm doing my hands like y'all can see me, but it comes out like this sort of vase shape, and her whole
Like she's
body is in
emerging.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that gave me
Interesting.
goosebumps. Yeah.
Oh. And of course, listeners, I forgot to tell you, but of course, the image will be in the show notes. Don't look at it while you're driving, and hopefully, you can look at it soon so you can make sense of what we're trying to make sense of as well.
Yeah, it is a hard one to describe.
Yeah, it really is. Um, you really just have to see it. But we're going to try. We're going to try to talk about
We're
it
gonna
and
try.
hopefully.
All right.
Okay. So, what do you think this painting is about?
I feel like I have a couple of conflicting. I feel like the longer I look at it, what I thought it was about is not what it was about. So
Mhm.
initially, when I saw the other legs, I thought this was like a beautiful, sensual representation of sex and like the beauty of your partner, seeing the beauty in you when you may not be able to see it, in the sense of the color, but then she's becoming colored. And I don't know if that's wrong, but the more I look at it, the more I think that it's really about her. It really is about one person and unveiling all of these different layers of
Mm.
herself, right? She has all of these colors, she has all of these limbs, to say, because she's so much more than just one woman.
Mhm. Yeah, that meaning really, or that view of this really resonates with me because I the more I look at it, the more I see there is an overall, if you take out the realistic part, if you just kind of,
Mhm,
imagine that was orange or whatever, you would see two legs, you would see the arm, you would see a stomach, you would see a breast, I think, this like
mhm.
red part in the front. And then this blue, I don't know what to make of the blue. I think we're
Like
going to come back
it's
to the
curved
blue.
like an arm, but it almost
Yeah.
has like it reminds me of like neurons or the
Yeah.
circulatory system. So this like really becoming bare sort of sense.
Yeah. And then it just gets thrown off by that the realistic part that is fully encapsulated in her.
And she looks like, yeah, she looks like she's reaching down between her legs
Hmm.
and all of these things as she's discovering herself. It feels like she's pulling back the layers of herself,
Hmm.
and letting them all show, which really resonates with me as well.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
You know, I think I've always tried to, fit in a box, right? Like in
Hmm.
school, I was like the good smart kid, um and and I filled all these roles. When I was a teacher, I was like, the energetic young teacher that was going to change the world, and yeah, and I fit really into these boxes, and I've tried so hard to find my place. And I come back to like, who am I? And that definitely, when I had my son, so my son is 16 months old. When I had my son, and I think, anyone who has given birth undergoes this identity
Hmm.
crisis shift somewhere around 8 weeks old. And it's like, I wanted so bad to be a mother. Like I knew that was something I wanted, but and motherhood is so all encompassing. Like we never turn it off, right?
Yeah.
We're always on, even when we're away, always thinking about the kid, or the next stage in development, or when you need to change out their clothes or schedule a dentist appointment. And it's so all encompassing. And that conflicted with an interesting time in my life when I started to realize that I was several things. And I think I've spent this past year being like, well, when do I have time for all these other parts of myself, and trying to make time and honor that. And honestly, this piece feels really timely because
Hmm.
my interpretation of it at least feels very timely because I've been doing the same job for about 6 years. I was a content writer, and I have been full time at one company as a content writer for a year. Love the company, great company. Wanted to stay to grow in the company, and that opportunity was given to me by my boss. It was just offered to me um, back in September, right? And it was right before our company's trip to Rome. So they paid for everybody to go to Rome and meet up. We're a fully remote company. So most of us had never met each other in real life. And so in that, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And my she just stepped down from the company, but my boss at the time, she said, so what do you want to be when you grow up? And I know you're a grown up, but what do you want to be? Like, what's the next stage? I really got to thinking about it, and I was like, I don't see myself just being like writing for my day job and writing for like my side job as an author. Like that's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
Um, so who am I? And so I got to Rome, and that was a really transformational time. So travel is always
Yeah.
transformational. I travel a lot for me, or I mean, I've traveled a lot, and it's always transformational for me. And but this was the first time that I was away from my son.
Yeah.
And this was just, I mean, this was just less than 2 months ago. And I was going to be gone for 5 nights. I hadn't flown internationally by myself since I was 19, so 13 years. And, I was nervous. The last time I flew internationally, it was to an English speaking country, which Italy might as well be English speaking. Let's be honest, they all speak
Yeah.
English. They see you coming and they switch to English.
Yeah.
And, and so I had to like literally sever this motherhood part. And I spent a lot of the time, checking in on him, video calling, but not a ton.
Yeah.
And what I felt was this sense of this sense of purpose that was so it was staggering. It was I am part of something that is not just my family, that's bigger than me. It's something that is I love it and I'm valued. And I think that I've spent a lot of my life wanting to be valued and seeking my value. And it all just came to me of like, I'm a valuable contributor here. I'm valuable as my son's mother. I'm valuable as, I'm not like the most successful author by any means, but like I have value. I'm a good partner. I have these amazing friendships. It really took me, I
Hold
guess.
on one second. I don't know if it's my headphones or if it's you, but I'm losing you. So I'm just going to take my
uh,
headphones off just to see.
okay. Can
And
you
I'm
hear
just going to be
me?
really quiet for a minute. Okay, talk again. Let me hear you. Oh, you're gone. Hold on. Oh, it's because it's trying to play through my microphone. Play
Oh,
through my microphone. Okay, let's try again. I think it was my headphones
okay.
because I was
Is that better?
I was charging them at the last minute.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry
Yeah.
about
So
that.
that's okay. So I think it took this like literal severing of myself from my son, and I work from home. He's with me all the time. Um, and um, and I found that it wasn't that painful, right?
Yeah.
And that I was this whole other person. And it's not just this realization with like since becoming a mother, it feels like the realization I've been looking for my whole
Yeah.
life. This I don't have to be one thing. I am a multifaceted person, and that is who I am. And we all are that. And I feel like my therapist has been telling me that, but I haven't believed it until I was like, yeah. And so to me, this is like that severing, that unwrapping of like, look at all your different pieces that make you so beautiful, and there's so much passion in this. And I feel like I have a passion for all of these aspects of my life that I've just been seeking for so long. Um, and I'll get passionate about one thing or another. That's probably the ADHD, but like I feel this passionate contentedness with, hey, this is where my life is going, and this is exactly where I want to be.
Mhm.
So she's unwrapping herself, and that's what I feel like has been happening for me.
Yeah. That's been everything you were saying was resonating so hard with me because I've gone through that same process of the quote that I really resonate with these days is that I contain multitudes. I think it's Carl Sagan.
Yeah,
Is it Carl Sagan? It is Carl Sagan.
I think
Yes.
so.
No, it's Walt Whitman. Shoot.
I do love Walt
I
Whitman.
think it's Walt
Oh,
Whitman actually, but I will if I'm wrong about the Walt Whitman, I'll put it in the show notes. Check it. Check multitudes quote. Um, Anywho, yeah, I was the same way. It was like I grew up and I was a smart kid. I was the AP student. I was this, and
mhm,
then I was like, then I'm going to be this smart, talented museum person, and that was what I was gonna be. And then now that and then I had all these big, big goals, big goals, big goals, and then yeah, it was when I had kids, and then when I had um, life sort of slowed down. And I guess, man, I wonder if this happens to everybody in their 30s and 40s. It
maybe.
probably does. Text me, tell me, or DM me and tell me. Is this true for you too? Because I think it is. But yeah, it was just this moment of like, oh, you know what? Everything that I thought was wrong with me is actually just another part of me that's just me. And
Yeah.
everything that I want is good, and everything that is okay to want, and everything that I don't want is okay to not want, and everything I like
Mhm.
is okay to like, and everything I don't like is okay to not like. And it was just like kind of sounds really obvious, but it wasn't until
Yeah, you don't feel it because we're so conditioned in our society with like in group out, right? And I think you spend so much of your childhood kind of your 20s, floating between who am I? That you have to, I don't know if you're making a place for yourself or finding your place. Maybe it's more making it. But I think we're such social creatures that we seek it from the people around us until we realize that we have to find it like inside of us. Like we
Yeah.
have to find that contentedness.
Yeah. That's perfect. I'm actually, the book I'm writing is about using art in a path to whole as a path to wholeness. And that concept of wholeness is the same thing. It's like you're just you find that happiness, that contentment within yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so I love it. Okay, so beautiful. I want to come back to something that you were talking about that made me think of both what you were talking about in the painting, which is the concept of motherhood. Because when I became a mother, my entire relationship with my body changed.
Oh my gosh,
You
yes.
know, it's like suddenly my body created a person. And I was like,
Right?
I've been fighting with my body my entire life,
Mhm.
and then it made something, and it's perfect and beautiful and brilliant, and she and the two people, and so suddenly like I became a little less aggressive towards my body, a little bit more accepting of what it is and what it does. Um, how did that work for you?
So so I mean, none of you can see this, but I am a fat woman, and I reclaim that term for myself. I'm a big believer in fat liberation, but I wasn't a couple of years ago, right? So I got pregnant while I was in eating disorder treatment.
Mm.
And so I was finally like, something's got to give. I'm tired of the medical judgment, I'm tired of failing on diets. And I was diagnosed with a pretty severe eating disorder. And so I did an intensive outpatient program, which is like 5 hours of therapy a day. Like it's,
Ooh.
and it is, it was a great program. It was all online because it was 2020, and I so this is the first time that I had heard about. We've all heard the terms like body positivity, right? But those terms they're kind of meaningless,
Mhm.
and so this was about body acceptance, accepting your body for what it is. You don't have to be rah rah hoorah about your body, and I think most days I'm not rah rah hurrah about my body. I am very neutral, and that was a term that I learned of like, okay, well, if body acceptance is too hard, why don't we move toward body neutrality? And some days even that is really difficult, but so I got pregnant after 15 months of trying, and we I actually kind of I wasn't tracking or anything, and I got pregnant right before I was released from treatment, and that was really powerful because it came at this time that I learned all of this new information about how bodies work, about the diet industry, and how it's permeated the medical industry. Like and it's really, if you follow the money trail, it's really, really scary. And uh, I was doing these things. I had notifications on my phone that were body neutral statements about like my body allows me to find pleasure in life. Things like this. I didn't have to be like, I have the best arms ever. They were very neutral and affirming. So I undergo this whole process of pregnancy, and you're not just growing a human, like you grow a whole extra organ. Like the placenta is a whole extra organ,
Yeah.
and then you grow a human, and all of your innards shift around in this absolutely miraculous process. That you're like, wow, that is just so cool how we've evolved to this, just everything just shifts and it's normal and then it goes back and boom, there's a new human. And I mean, it's a little more than boom, but
things do go back. They're just maybe they're different.
yeah. And it was just really like, wow, like I am creating life. I have this human growing in me every day. But this came at the time that, like, toward the end of my pregnancy, I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, which is when I found my anti-diet dietitian that I work with. And so, I was having to monitor blood sugars,
Mm,
and that can really throw you back into eating disorder
yeah.
behaviors. So I was walking this really thin line um, for a while being amazed at my body, but also so scared that I was going to put my body through what I'd been putting my body through for so long. So I feel like my transformational, and then you hold this baby and you're like, it doesn't matter. But then you start like my body, what my body looks like doesn't matter. I created life. My baby loves cuddling up against me. It doesn't matter. And but eventually it starts mattering again. And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, but I have a mirror. I know what I look like.
It starts
He's
to matter, especially when they go to school and
yeah.
you go to the parent events and you're just like,
Oh yeah.
I
And
found it that was really triggering for me of worrying if my kids would be embarrassed about me or, that sort of thing. That really came
yeah,
back.
I run into that a lot. So we live in an area where there is a type of mother in this neighborhood, and so trying to meet parent friends, I've brought back all that self-consciousness. So you're like walking this like, oh wow, I really am the largest person by several dress sizes in this room, and how do you not be aware of that? And you can't not be aware of it. You just have to learn to be like, this is what it is, and my value has nothing to do with my size. But yeah, it all comes back. And so you're holding up these two truths simultaneously of like, my body did this amazing thing and created life. And every time I look at my child, I see that like that was inside, he was inside of me,
Yeah,
and
and then you
he's
see the features of
perfect.
you on this little person, and it's
Yeah. But
mind-blowing.
then also like I still this is a part of me. I am still a self-conscious fat woman in a world that hates fat people.
Yeah.
And you have these two truths that you have to live. But isn't that part of all of it? Is like we are all of these things. And some of the things aren't good or bad. They're just a part of us.
Yeah. Love it. Okay, so let's pull it back to the painting and find where are you seeing this conversation in the work of art itself? Either the fat conversation or, the stuff you were saying earlier. Um, Tell us more about what you're seeing in the art.
To the more realistic part of the painting, it's very much a larger woman. There are
Mhm.
natural curves. There's the B-shaped belly, if I'm interpreting that belly button correctly.
Mhm.
Uh, there's uh, the smooth sloping curve of her body, but then the legs surrounding her are so muscular, almost masculine.
Mm.
I would say definitely masculine. And but like Greek ideal masculine, like very, very muscular, very sharp angles. And the contrast is interesting because she's soft on the outside. She is soft, and she has probably dealt with a lot of hate and cruelty and persevered, but she's also just immensely strong. And all of that is inside of her, and all of it is coming out of this same part of it's all her. So while her shell may be soft and she, still has soft elements, so like the bottom of the painting, what looks to be her breast or stomach, that's painted in the colors. So she's soft on the inside too, but she's also strong and masculine. Not I hate that word. Why am I using that word? Muscular is what I was trying to say, but
Yeah.
metaphorically muscular, right? She has perseverance and stamina and inside of her too. Like that's a part of her.
Mhm. Yeah, that arm especially just it looks so strong.
Yeah.
It's like it's curvy, but it's in the way it's grabbing her leg.
Yeah.
But when as you were talking, I started to notice, I don't know how many times I say as you were talking, I started to notice in this podcast, and I've only done 3 episodes, but okay, look at the curvy, look at the like the realistic part and
Uh-huh.
see the position of the legs, the position of the stomach, the position of the hand, like in the middle of that left thigh.
Uh-huh.
Zoom it out. It's the exact same pose as the colorful figure.
Oh my goodness, you're right.
So this like fleshy part here could be her breast.
Yeah. So it really is embracing all of those parts of
Yeah,
herself. Like she's so much more than what her body holds, what might be seen on the outside.
yeah.
She's emerging.
Ooh, yeah, I love that she's so much more than what her body holds is like her physical, actually the realistic version of her body is much smaller, but like her spirit and her energy and her
Her
vitality
clarity,
like just coming
yeah.
out of her bigger. Ooh,
And beautifully,
I love it. That gave me
vibrantly.
chills too.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah, she is vibrant.
yeah,
And I
totally.
think that the strong brush strokes are really like she's making her mark.
Yeah,
And yeah, those aren't timid brush strokes. She's really giving everything to this life and to herself.
totally. I love it.
Love it too. That's a great painting.
Yeah, I love it. It's just getting greater the more I look
Yeah.
at it. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but this one, most of the time it does happen. But this one is definitely like just the more I look at it, the more like connected to it I find.
Hmm.
Another thing that I really like about this painting is is that sensuality that you noticed at the beginning. That it's so like loving and soft, and even though it has these strong lines,
Hmm.
these bold colors, like it feels very safe and very comforting and very much like um she feels she seems to feel very comfortable with who she is and in her body in this moment, like to just lay there naked on the bed, like that's a vulnerable that's a vulnerable thing, but she just seems so like comfortable.
Or she's trying to comfort herself. Is she letting
Yeah,
inner part out to comfort her because she does feel vulnerable, and so she's trying to find her peace and her safety within herself. So she's wrapping herself in her own vibrancy.
hmm, love it. Okay, what else are you noticing? We could be getting to a point where we see all the things,
Yeah,
but I still
I find
keep getting drawn to this blue
the
along the edge.
blue is so shocking. Like on the right side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for your listeners,
Yeah.
there's this very like navy, bright navy blue outline to the right side of the figure, sort of is on the other side of the fleshy part, comes down, and then at the bottom it sort of fans out into what Crystal had said, like where like neurons or like it looks like a webbed lines coming out of it. And I have been my eye gets drawn to it constantly.
I think it's a heart. You seen a
Ooh.
heart with all of the that's redwood? It's got the blue arteries going in, and it's got that kind of ruddy. bloodyish color behind it, like not a real bright red, but it looks like a heart
Yeah.
or a lung or something that's very
Yeah. Like it's those
life-giving.
veins, those blue veins.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of like cardiac models when you look at
Yeah.
pictures of the hearts with the blue arteries going in.
Interesting. And then the like formal art analysis person in me is like, well, there needs to be blue there, or otherwise the painting would not be balanced. So and there's that too. Like if that blue wasn't there, there would be a problem.
But you
Like
can
it
put
would
the
be.
blue in some way. I don't know. I feel like it's very much like a living element
Mm,
rather than something like it's the rest of the painting is very external, right? They're all external body parts, but then I've never seen that sort of brachiating pattern in anything that isn't a living thing or
right.
creature, right? Like you see it in leaves or you see it in
Mhm.
bodies or things like that. Like it's a very specific pattern that she
Yeah.
picked there for the blue. It's something living and
And
internal.
noticing too that the limbs all have a lot of blue and green, but then her torso and her breast that we can see we couldn't see the one, those are
Mhm.
more like warmer colors, the reds and yellows and oranges. They have a little bit of the cool colors in there too, but it's mainly warm colors, and that makes me think of like the warmth of the heart and like the heat
Mhm.
of like the spirit and the energy centers um, as well.
Yeah, I think that the contrast is so strong in those colors. And I think for me, that's one thing that I'm learning is like we have these contrasting things about us that, the truths that we hold. Um, you can have
Mm.
good feelings and bad feelings all at the same time. You can have good memories and bad memories about this same event or the same person. And we have to, rather than trying to make sense of it, we just have to embrace that they're both true. In this case, the contrast makes it all the more beautiful. It's more complex than if it had just been cool colors.
Yeah, I love that. So one of the things I started doing on my last episode was to invite the listeners to ponder some sort of question. And so what you just said made me think of what that could be for this episode, and that is where are you both and where are you contrasting things? So that might be something to journal on or think about. Where is that sort of paradoxical thing in your life? And are you judging yourself for it or how are you accepting it?
Yeah,
So.
that's a great question. My therapist asks me that all the time. So,
Yeah. I wrote a whole part about it in my book. Just I think it was well, and that was the chapter I've been working on this week is about my body and like especially like the sensory sensitivities and stuff that I have, and how it was so hard to untangle all of that from like the shame and the torture that I did of my body through diet culture, so it's like
yes.
I thought I was broken, I thought I was broken, I thought I was broken, trying to fix myself, and by fixing myself it was diets and surgeries and things. And then once I sort of got to the other side of that, of well, maybe I should just can be happy how I am now. Maybe I can be happy now and not have to wait until I'm a certain size. And then that's when I started to realize, oh, you know what? When I'm in a really loud environment that smells bad, I shut down. Like it's not, there's something wrong with
Hmm.
me. And it was just like things I noticed about my body that I didn't notice before. Or, oh, I get a
Hmm.
headache when I do this. Or it was all of a sudden when that judgment was released, um, I was able to see it. That's not how I started this by talking about the contrasts. And then I just went a whole different direction. That's fine. Like, that chapter also has a bit about the paradox, the I am two opposite things in a lot of ways. Um,
Yes.
so unrelated story, just what I wrote this morning, so it's fresh in my mind.
No, I get that. But I mean, it's true. Like when you really start to accept that contrast within yourself, you start seeing more of these things and releasing some of the judgment,
Mhm.
and seeing things like, how did I not see this for my entire life? I've lived
Yeah,
with myself for decades. How am I just now noticing this? And
yeah. I know
that's
both you and I, in just in
awful.
this last in 2022, both discovered we had ADHD, and it was just like I made it 41 years, and then
Yeah,
it
yeah,
is so
32 here.
obvious now.
How? Like
It's so
how?
obvious.
And I started suspecting as I was reading more about it because of my husband. And yeah, my psychiatrist was like, yeah, of course you were the good kid. You have the inattentive type, you're
Yeah,
you're not bouncing off the walls. I'm like, I've never bounced off the walls in my life. So how can I be ADHD?
yep.
But yeah, it's my brain just works a little differently and needs a little more help. And
Mhm.
that's pretty cool, like it really makes you see the inequity just in day-to-day life. And I'm really lucky, like I work for a company that's like, get your work done, we don't care, you can work at 2 a.m., we don't really care, as long as you show up to the meetings you're fine, which is
Yeah.
really great for someone like me. But not that I work at 2 a.m., I'm fast asleep at 2 a.m., I have a toddler. But I can just how inaccessible so much of the world is, and how many people's brains work differently. Like, is there really such a thing as neurodivergence? Or, is it all just everyone's brain works a little differently?
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to say because so
Yeah.
many of us are just pretending,
Yeah.
um,
The masking,
and not even knowing
especially.
that we're doing
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right. Now I feel like we have to add the ADHD into this painting, even if we didn't find it in this painting to begin with. We did mention it. Do you see the ADHD in this painting?
I do. Look at all the ways that like the brush strokes go all different ways, right? It's
Mhm.
like it's especially this brown bit on the breast in the lower left. It's like the brush was going and then it went like it just completely derailed. Um and so there's this random squiggly, but it probably wouldn't look right if there wasn't a random squiggly now that we've seen it. Yeah, and the bright colors. I mean, the world's brighter when you're, looking from one thing to another all the time. I think
Mhm.
that's
As you, I'm going to say it again. Now I'm going to be so self-conscious. As you were talking, it made me it made me notice that 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 then I distracted myself. This is the ADHD. I forget what I'm talking about in the middle of what I'm saying.
what happens when two ADHD people record a podcast episode.
I do it all the time. I'll get there. Let me look at it. It was about the lines. Oh, as how energetic all of the brushstrokes were. So you were, making the sound effects, and they're all going different directions, and they're different thicknesses, and they're very expressive. I can feel like the movement of the artist.
Hmm.
But it's a painting of where they're like the main figure is laying still and comfortable and relaxed and lounging. But then there's all this energy in that. So that's another element of contrast is we have all this
Yeah,
dramatic lines and color when it's a like relaxing, lounging scene.
yeah, that is really, really interesting because I wouldn't describe this painting as particularly relaxing, but she is in a lounged, relaxed pose.
Yeah. And I saw the ADHD too, and I never thought I had it because I could be so focused.
Hmm.
I can focus for days on end, and I realize now that's actually a symptom of ADHD. I didn't know that, but my hyper focus is real. I'll forget to eat. I won't sleep. I'll just keep
Hmm.
just keep going. And so, but then there's some moments I'm really spontaneous and I'm jumping from one thing to the other. But there's sometimes I am just like locked in, and
Hmm.
so it's almost like the stomach part is like the really highly focused, and there's a lot of attention to it. But then the rest of it is really all over the place. And I never could
Yeah.
understood how I could be both of those things, how I can just
Yeah.
be so focused and so in it and then not be able to do like really basic stuff in my life. So it's the problem.
Yeah, no, I feel that deep in my soul.
Yeah.
Like I don't lack willpower. I've written 3 novels. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
right?
I mean, like,
I have a whole
why
business that I've
can't
been
I
running for
start a
years
load
and
of
years, but
laundry?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, yep, yep. All right. So it's a painting of contrasts, of finding of layers of yourself, being more than just what your body is, but also being really in touch with your body. We covered a lot of stuff. Do you think there's
Yeah.
anything that was left unsaid?
I feel like we could probably talk about this for 5 hours or
Yeah.
more. So and just keep unraveling pieces. But I think we did a pretty detailed job in this time.
Awesome. Yeah, I think so too. Okay. Well, tell our listeners where they can find your books.
You can find my books on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or you can go through my website, which is always better. That's crystalincraker.com, or you can find me on Instagram at crystalincrakerauthor, and I'm sure Cindy will type my name out so that you can spell
Yeah,
it.
because Crystal is
And
spelled 4,000 different ways.
yes, yes. um, so yeah, seek me out. And you know, I touch on a lot of this contrast in my work too, as a writer, and that's important to me is these multifaceted character studies.
If we were to pick one book to read out of the three that you said three, right? And with the four upcoming, or is the three upcoming?
The fourth one is coming out in February.
Which
Yes.
one should we read first? Which one's the best one?
Oh my God. Okay, so the one coming out is the best one.
Okay.
But if you want, you should start at the beginning of the series that is released
Oh, it's a
because
series. Okay.
the first three, yeah, the 3 books that I have out is a trilogy. So The
Okay.
Sage's Consort is the first book in the Scholars of Elandria series. And it's a real quick read. You can move through it. So you're always like, oh, fantasy, I love it, but it's such a commitment. Not these books. They're really focused on the characters and the romance, but how they grow as individuals in order to be together.
Love it. Okay. We will put links to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Cindy.